I had a bit of time this morning, so I thought I'd use it and do typical little bit of a live like I've been doing. I've been enjoying doing them actually a little bit more regularly, and I get a lot of messages from people saying how much they enjoy them. So I just thought I'd jump on and do it today. The first thing that I wanted to do is a good morning everybody that's joining. It's just mentioned that my Inner You program is now open, so you're able to sign up for the next cohort of Inner You. If you don't know what that is, it's for anybody that is on their healing journey or wants to start their healing journey and doesn't really know where to begin. It's a 6-week program where there's lots of pre-recorded content that you can do at your own pace, and I'll try and take you on a journey over the course of the 6 weeks so you can understand who you are in your life today, why you show up in the way that you do, address some of your past relationships, and ultimately go and get your inner child and become their champion. And that's the process that we go on over 6 weeks. Like I say, there's lots of pre-recorded stuff for you to do in your own time. And then once a week, there's a live session on Zoom for 90 minutes. We do a big breath work for emotional release and a visualization. And we just talk through the week's work like that. So it starts on the 5th of June and open to registration from today, or has been open for a couple of days, and lots of people are already signing up. So I'd love to see some of you on there. It's £99 to try and make it as accessible as I can. I've not created an online course and then, skyrocketed the cost through the roof. I want to make it something that everybody can do, and as many people as we can. So it's there, and if you want it, you should come and try it. And it's lovely to see some Inner You people that are in here already and that are part Breathing Space as well. So yeah, that's always good. So I thought I'd start off by that. As normal, if you've got any questions, chuck them in. The best thing to do is probably put them in the Q&A bit, because then they're easier for me to pick out and we can do some exploration of stuff that people are talking about there. Or you can write it in the chat, and as much as I can, I will keep up with it the best that I can. So yeah, look, what's been interesting is that I've been looking at some of because I read a lot of the stuff that I get online, right? And I think it's important for me to do that, and it's important for me to challenge myself in terms of what people say and what I hear. And sometimes the comments trigger me a little bit, and sometimes they trigger me because somebody's, I don't know, said something and it makes me wrong, and then I have to address myself and stuff like that. Sometimes it triggers me because it's annoying what people say. I want to talk about something that somebody said on there yesterday. I get a lot of this style of comment about the toxic parent stuff, yeah. Somebody said to me, it's okay to create distance. It's okay to lay down firm and strong boundaries, but I would never tell anybody to cut their parent off because it's your parents at the end of the day. And let me tell you something about this. It's your parents at the end of the day. This person told me as well, by the way, that I'm part of some sort of conspiracy to break up the traditional family. I'm part of somebody who wants to, I promote family, and I promote keeping families together the best that we can. Check any of my work and you'll understand that, right? But what I do not promote is that people stick in an abusive relationship and allow abuse to continue and perpetuate just because that person happens to be your parent. I will never ever say that is something that we should be pushing and striving for and to do, right? Allowing abuse to perpetuate just because somebody is a parent is the dysfunction that we've got within our society and that we live in, yeah? And it makes me angry when people throw at people that have gone their whole lives and tried everything that they can, yeah, to try and make a relationship work with a parent just because they are their parent, right? They try everything. They abandon themselves. They do everything that the parent wants to do. They allow the abuse. They put up with all of the crap, yeah? And then finally, in the end, they say, the only thing I can do is put myself first. To have any chance at any kind of positive emotional well-being in my life, I'm going to put myself first. And then you get idiots that pop up saying things like, they are your parents at the end of the day. And it's so short-sighted. It allows abuse to perpetuate. And by the way, for the spiritually enlightened out there who want to say to me that I sound angry in my videos, it's because I am angry, right? And what I'm doing with my anger is I'm using my intellect, I'm using my adult voice, and I'm using assertiveness to try and get a point across. If you think that healing and spirituality is about reaching a place where you can deal with everything calm and it doesn't make you angry, then you're on the wrong page. Because for me, when I look at the structures that we exist in, anything of meaning that has happened throughout history, because of power structures, has had to be done with a little bit of force and using one's anger. And that's important to me. The thing that I will continue to try and promote and hold space for are the people who have lived with abuse and toxicity all of their life and have made a decision that for some reason society wants to try and protect the abuser before they protect anybody else. Okay, I've got a good question here. It's a different topic. Any tips on cutting out comfort eating? Listen, I've talked a lot about this and people ask me a lot about it. My kryptonite is chocolate and sweets. I am a food addict in that sense. And I understand that we have a lot of concern around restrictive eating, but cutting out sugar and sweets, as in chocolate and sweets, which are essentially a refined drug, is not restrictive eating. It's the same as me cutting out alcohol. I'm 4 or 5 weeks in now to eating no sweets and chocolate, and the comfort eating has subsided quite a lot. In the same way that drinking alcohol subsided a lot when I stopped drinking alcohol altogether. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. And the only times I want to eat sweets and chocolate is when I feel a little bit uncomfortable or I don't feel very good in my skin and I want to escape, the same way that I used to drink alcohol. Yeah, so I've had to look at my issues with food and sugar in the same light as I look at addiction. And that's just me. I appreciate we are rightly so concerned about restrictive eating, but that's not my issue. My issue is binge eating. My issue is trying to escape the ways that I feel by eating. Somebody said, oh my God, a controlled drug. The biggest killer drug in the world is not alcohol, it's not heroin, it's not crack cocaine. It's refined sugar. And we market it to children from the moment they're born. And food companies, spend millions and billions of pounds making sure that they get the right amount of sugar and salt within most foods to make it addictive so that we continue to eat it. So we have to be careful with sugar. And so I have a sugar problem. I have an addiction to sugar. People understand my situation with alcohol and don't say, wow, you shouldn't restrict what you drink. Right? They go, yeah, it probably makes sense that you don't drink again. And we trick ourselves into thinking that the treat is to have just sugar, just refined sugar on its own, right? To have sweets all wrapped up in lovely pink wrappers. You know what the real treat is for me in my life at the moment is feeling the way that I feel, not being trapped in a cycle that perpetuates itself with shame, where I binge eat in the night and then I starve myself the next day. Now people might say, you've got to be careful without starving yourself, but the starving myself that happens the next day only happens because of the binge that happened the night before, because I feel so shamed about how badly I ate. And I ate until I had to go to bed because I felt sick, and then I hate myself and I look in the mirror and I think I'm a disgrace. And so the next day I punish myself all day as a result of that. And then later on in the evening when I'm starving, I crash and I binge eat again. So what's completely changed my life currently at the moment is going completely abstinent from sugar and sweets. I've not once starved myself since I've done that. And I've, at the moment, out of that shame cycle. How do I let go of the anger I have towards my mother? I cut her off and still have a lot of anger. One thing I would say is to try my breathwork for emotional release, which is worth trying, right? You have to try and find healthy ways to allow yourself to have your anger, right? Because if you are angry, and let me just read the question again. If you are angry towards a mother who you've had to cut off because they're incredibly toxic and couldn't even do a small breadcrumb of what they should have been doing as a parent, and you've had to cut them off because of the way that they make you feel, then your anger is justified and your anger is correct, right? I think anger perpetuates itself when we hold it in and we don't find ways to release it. Breath work works really well for me for releasing anger. Going to the gym, long runs or whatever might help other people, but you do need to find a way to let it out and have compassion for the fact that it exists. We have a really unhealthy relationship with anger, I think, in our culture, in Western culture. And I get people commenting on my stuff all of the time saying, if you reach this place, you will reach a place where anger doesn't affect you anymore. And you realize that anytime you're angry, it's because you're projecting your own stuff onto somebody else. That sometimes is true when we're angry. You know what else is also true? We're sometimes angry because other people are being morons or being horrible to us or having a level of toxicity, and we're angry to show ourselves that it's not right, and we need to do something about it and lay a boundary. So if your anger, sorry, this is a real roundabout way of answering the question. I think your anger is justified. The way that you have to deal with it, I would say, is to try and find ways to allow it to come out in a healthy way and have compassion for yourself when it does make you flip a little bit, because anybody in your situation would feel angry. How do I explain to my kids, Mum? How do I explain to my kids my mum just cutting me off suddenly? Do I keep it positive or tell the truth? I will tell you what I would do if I was in the situation myself and I was reflecting on the situation myself. I would always tell my kids the truth, because I believe that if I don't tell my kids the truth, they will know that it's not the truth. And then they will start to create and make up a story themselves. And because children are naturally egocentric, the story will likely be that there's a problem with them, and that's why we've not been able to be truthful. So with the right language and the right care and attention, I think children should always be given the truth. If I look at my own life, my dad died when I was young, my dad was an alcoholic and all that kind of stuff. The absence of being able to look at the truth when I was a child is what caused me problems as an adult, because I had to create ways to deal with all the difficulty. I think children have a huge capacity to be able to deal with what life throws at them if they're supported to do it properly. I actually think the biggest mistake that we make with children is we try and protect them by sweeping the truth under the carpet and pretending everything's all right and everything's positive, and then they start to think, this is difficult. Let me take that a step further. Imagine there was some difficulty going on in a situation. You knew something bad had happened. You could feel it and sense it, like kids do, yeah? But everybody around you is acting positive, right? That's fine, don't worry, there's nothing going on, everything's okay. And they're wrapping up the truth in a nice little bow, right, to try and protect you. Now imagine you're the child and you still, rightly, feel, something's not right. But everybody around you's happy and being positive and looking for the positives. What are you going to do as a child? What you're going to do as a child, you're going to go, there's something wrong with me. Why do I feel like this? Why can't I be happy like everybody else is? Right? And you're going to weigh up how you feel on the outside against how they are on the outside, and then you're going to make yourself wrong. So I always say, give the kids the truth in the best language that you can, and then support them through that. Yeah? Because then at least they have the truth, and then they can deal with it. My mother cut me off when I was 11. I tried to reach out, but she doesn't respond, but still sends birthday cards, presents, even though she's never met my kids. It's confusing. I'm not sure what to do. She was abusive when I was younger. Very common for toxic parents to have no interest whatsoever and send birthday cards and Christmas cards. Here's one of the reasons why I think they do it. So that when they're talking to people about having no contact with you, they can say, I've sent birthday cards and Christmas cards every year, and still they don't want to have a relationship with me. That's why I think a lot of it happens, because I think they are that covert narcissist type who wants to be the victim, and that's how they make themselves at the center of the universe. And so they send the birthday cards, yeah, and they talk about how horrible it is. They pop up on my social media all the time talking about how horrible it is for them that their child doesn't want to have a relationship with them, and because they can't see the truth and they can't talk about the truth, because then they would have to look at their own shit, and they don't want to do that. So how do you deal with that? Like I've always said, it's not easy, man. It's not easy, and it's a horrible situation, and you have to understand that every time that they do it, it's going to be difficult. But if you're no contact because you've reached that stage, my advice, or what I would say is that you continue to do what you're doing, because at the moment you try and engage with them, yeah, then they're in, aren't they? And then they'll start tying you up. How do I deal with a toxic sibling that I've cut off, but our parents are supporting them, and it's really hard to be around them because of everything? Again, listen, I don't want to try and give you answers to questions that don't necessarily have clear answers. Now, there will be people, and there's accounts that you can follow that will give you straight answers and say, don't do this, cut them out, and don't ever go there. I don't think it's that simple. I think it's hard. I think it's difficult for you. And I think knowing what's acceptable for you and what you will allow to be your rights should be what you try and stick to. So if that means you don't go to an event because you don't want to go there, because you know that these people are going to be there and what it'll be like, then you don't go, and you don't have to explain yourself. And I'm not coming because I don't feel up to it, or I'm not coming because I don't want to is enough. In those situations, that's what I would say. I know it's not the best advice, but that is what I would say about that. Why did mum play me and my siblings off against each other? Toxic parents play siblings off against each other primarily, I believe, because it helps them to gain control. They will do it so that the siblings can be spies, so that they know that if one sibling does something, one child does something that they don't want them to do, or that doesn't feed into their plan and doesn't help them with their control, they know that by playing the siblings off against each other, the other siblings will always shop them in. That's why they do it. It's about control. Another thing that the toxic parents will do is keep all of you siblings all walking on eggshells, always on your toes, never really knowing. So you have to lie when it's just as easy to tell the truth, because anytime they ask you something, you know it's loaded, it might not be loaded, but you feel like it might be loaded. So you're going to go straight down the line of, I don't know, I've got no idea if it's to do with you, or you're going to shop your sibling in. It's a common form of control. Keep everybody on a knife edge. Yeah, they're much easier to control. My ex talks of our children but doesn't walk the walk. Our children are hurting by his inconsistency and him reaching out to them, but always on his own terms. How do I help them cope? I think that if you're co-parenting, right, with somebody that might be the type of toxic parent that we're talking about, then you're not co-parenting, you're parallel parenting, right, which is slightly different, as in you're not doing things together, you're doing what you do and then they do what they do. I think it's too simplistic to say, well, you need to cut the kids off, because I think then they will always feel like you cut it off. I think if you're parallel parenting with a toxic parent in the way that we're talking about, you almost have to live life with a dustpan and brush in your hands, which is walking about behind them. When they mess up, you sweep up and you pick up the rubbish and you pick up the crap that comes from it. And you support your children and validate the ways that they feel, and you always offer them what you see as the truth. And that'll be horrible, and there'll be times when you want to lash out, and there'll be times when you probably do lash out, and there'll be times when you put that other parent down in front of them, and I think that's, you know, part of what you're going to experience. But I do think that if you can love them and support them through what they're experiencing, eventually they will come to the decision themselves. And they will do what's best for them. I think that's the best that we can do. My father had his second stroke and called during having it from the hospital. I cut him off before I was thinking he is dying, so to comfort him, I told him I forgive him. He survived. Now what? I mean, look, if his behaviours continued to be the way that he was, you did what you had to do to survive that moment. Do what you need to do to survive the moment today. I know that sounds like simplistic and not like there's massive advice or anything like that, but that is what I would say. Any more coming in? My father was physically and mentally abusive. I had to cut off my narcissistic abusive sister, and she turned my mother against me. They have an unhealthy trauma bond. Why am I wrong for wanting to heal? You're not wrong for wanting to heal. That's the truth. That's the reality of that. But it's difficult. And these are the things, yeah, when you're talking in these big loads of different family dynamics, that's why I don't even like giving advice. I try and reflect on what the people say to me in these things, but I try not to give advice because every situation is different, man. And you just have to do whatever you can do to survive in the moment. Why is it that my mum would be normal 1 minute and then abusive the next? Is this a mental health issue? Maybe. Depends what we mean by mental health issue, I guess. I mean, I don't know, man. It depends what you mean by normal 1 minute and then not. The toxic parent, like the high-end toxic parent that I'm talking about, are only really normal when they're using it as a way of getting to control. Yeah, they're using it to bring you in so that they can do and use you for exactly what they need to do. That might not be the parent that you're talking about. You might be talking about a parent who really struggles emotionally and with life, and so sometimes is not a very nice person and then tries their best to be a good person. I think that's probably all parents, all right? But in the small comment that you've given me, to make sure that I'm being as balanced as I can in the way that I approach it, it could be that. I'm not a very nice parent, way more than I would like to be. That's the truth. Yeah, I wish I could be a better parent more often. I think that's true of all parents, yes? It's bloody hard. I think if you get it right 20% of the time, I think you've done really, really well. But the toxic parent that I'm talking about, yeah, if they're that, then the likelihood is that when they're nice, it's not because, they're being nice and then going through a difficult time. They're normally just nice as a way of control. And it's worth me making that distinction. I can't distinguish what it is for you. Only you can do that. That's the reality. How are we doing for time? I'm going to do like 2 to 5 more minutes and then I'm going to be done, I think. So any more questions? Our daughter is thinking of cutting him off. She's 12. He threatened to return Christmas presents. What a prick. That's the last time you saw the kids. Sorry for saying that. But this is what we're dealing with. This is what we're dealing with. And this is why it annoys me when people online come, like, this person here, I'm not going to say her name, but this person here, 12-year-old daughter is at the point where she doesn't know if she wants to see her dad anymore, right? And his response is to return Christmas presents. Like, this is what's disgusting. This is why I talk and do the work that I do. Because most normal people, any normal parent, yeah, in the heat of the moment, if there's an argument that's gone on and one of the kids say, I don't want to see you anymore, then you might go, well, yeah, well, don't then, right? In the heat of the moment, that's the only way I can imagine that happening, yeah? But like, if your child is like, if one of my kids said to me, I don't want to see you anymore, if my reaction was, then well, then I'll send the Christmas presents back, then do you know what? More for me if they never see me again. That's what I think, man. That's what I think, man. It's good to talk about events that occurred which have been dreamed as normal, but speaking to professionals, speaking to friends and professionals made you realise it really wasn't, and it was mind constant abuse. Yeah, I think that's really common, right? Is that a lot of people don't realise how toxic and abusive their childhood was until they start talking about stories of their childhood in adulthood and see people's faces change. And then they're like, wow, that's not normal. I think that's very common. My father is a narcissist. He has taken me to court for an injunction. This is unforgettable, but friends and family tell me to make peace with him as he's old and ill. I get this a lot, right? People being told by family members and friends to make peace with somebody that's abusive because they're old and ill. Can you imagine saying to a victim of abuse whose abuser is in prison and dying, your abuser is in prison and dying, you should get a visit with them and go and, recollect with them, right? Reconcile with them because they might die. I mean, it's unfathomable and it sounds ridiculous for me to say that. So why do we tell family members to do that? Now listen, I understand in some situations people might do that and they might find some peace in doing that before the death ends. But you know what you know what you should be saying to somebody in this situation if they've got somebody that they've had to cut out of their life and that person is now ill and perhaps dying? You should be saying, a good friend should be saying, how do I support you in this? I support you in whatever decision you want to make and I'll be here for you. Even if you make what turns out to be the wrong decision, I'll be here for you because I'll understand that you made what you thought was the right decision in that moment. And that's how I'm going to be there for you. This is why people should not come with advice and fixing all of the time. They should listen to people, hear them out, hear their conundrum, hear the predicament they're in, and support them through whatever decision they make as a friend. That's what supporting somebody is. Not pushing your own crap on them as if you've got an idea that they live the same kind of life as you. The key difference between a toxic parent and a parent who is just struggling with their emotions is that a toxic abusive parent will never apologize. Yeah, exactly. Did you go on to say something else after that? Yeah, so that is the big difference. I think the big difference when you talk about toxic, they'll never apologize. They will, and they will be consistent. Yeah, they will always go back to it. They will always consistently throughout your whole life. The only time they're ever nice is when they want or need something, and they will never reflect and apologize and look at their part in the situation and try and meet you halfway. And the same person that's mentioning the flying monkeys all of the time. If you've ever experienced anybody that's toxic, you'll know about the flying monkeys. This is the people that even in the face of clear evidence will back the other person no matter what, right? And that like helps to make you think that you must be crazy because there's somebody else looking me straight in the eye and believing this absolute crap and chaos and taking it for face value. So it makes you question your reality again, doesn't it? Right, I'm going to do these last two and then I've got to finish. Someone in the comments asked they had a toxic parent. They had to cut toxic parents out, but now he's mourning a relationship with his parents. How do you deal with this and reaffirm your decisions? I would like to know your response too. They had to cut a toxic parent, but now he is mourning a relationship with his parents. Look, I think that's common, yeah, and I've talked a lot about living grief on a lot of the other posts. You have to grieve losing the parent that you never had, right? You're not actually grieving the fact that you finally cut them out, right? What you're now grieving is the realization that they never could be and never were going to be the parent that you should have had and deserved to have. So it's actually, if you've reached that stage where you've had to cut them, you're not mourning cutting them off. The cutting them off has pushed you to the realization that you now have to mourn what they could never be and losing the relationship of what they could never be. That's likely it, what you're mourning. And that is what we might describe as living grief or complex grief, complicated grief. Last one, how to deal with a covert narcissist mum who drags everyone in as her flying monkeys and burns all my relationships with my brothers and even some friends, all to blame, shame me to protect herself and avoiding the truth. I don't think there's one answer that I can give you to that. Like, I don't know how you deal with it. Find community if you can, find people around you that are going through the same thing so that you're not alone in it. But it's not easy, man. Like you don't deal with it. You can't deal with it. You know, and again, this is one thing that I always try and do in what I do is I see lots of accounts on there that are like, well, you do this, cut them out and go this and do these 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 things and it'll all go away. I don't think it works like that, man. Not when you're dealing with this kind of complicated stuff when it's family. So I'll just tell you the truth, and that's going to be hard. It's not going to be nice. Find some community. Try and work on yourself. Be the best version of yourself that you can be in spite of them. And know that it's not you, you know? And that's not the best Instagrammable social media stuff, right? It's not like a do X, Y, and Z and your life will change and you'll go away with it. But I just don't think that's the truth. And I'd like as much as I can to deal in the truth. I deal with this by becoming the parents I never had to my own kids. Thanks for your comments and grief, yeah. Yeah, a great way to do it. If you're a parent yourself, learn from it and be the best version that you can. A great way to end this. I've got to jump now because I've ran over longer than I was going to anyway. Appreciate this. I enjoy these lives as always. This will be saved and put on my profile as normal, and I'll make some smaller content. It also goes on YouTube as well, so you can find it there. And yeah, thank you.